welcome back, listeners, to the Soul Mirror podcast. I'm your host, Sana. And in this episode, we lean into the radical act of vulnerability with, of course, open arms. Now, listeners, you ever feel like the world teaches us to close in, to like armor up, shrink back, and stay out of touch? Like literally and figuratively? What if the very thing we need to heal is what we have been taught to avoid? Human connection. Now, listeners, my guest, Melinda Lee Schmitt, she didn't just write a book called Rebel Hugger, she lives it. After hugging thousands of strangers, navigating the soul quaking terrain of divorce during the pandemic, and emerging not just whole but empowered, she's here to show us how hugging strangers helped her hug the parts of herself she once abandoned. And listeners, Melinda isn't just an empowerment coach, she is a soul whisperer, integrating energy healing, animal communication, and nature based rituals to help divorced women reclaim their spirit and rewrite their story. And today, she's going to show us how hugs became a spiritual mirror and maybe yours too. So, with that, Melinda, welcome to the show. And I'm really, really excited to have you here with us.
Thank you, Sana. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Absolutely. And let's start with a big digital virtual hug.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So let's get raw from the start. I mean,
Yeah.
why hugs? I mean, one biological reason which I can give, but it's more towards when we speak in the context of hugging our loved ones. You know, uh, scientifically, biologically, it is said that when we hug our loved ones, there are so many hormones kind of getting released in our body, which kind of gives us that feeling of love, security. We feel like we are the safest, when we are hugging them, something like that, mostly. But here hugged people you didn't even know. And what made you turn to something so simple, so human, but in a time when people are even afraid to even touch, were even afraid to touch?
Yeah. So I was really missing connection because I had moved. I'm here in the United States and I had moved multiple states away and I was away from all of my friends and family. And I really missed the connection that comes with the hugs. And I thought, like, if I'm missing that, then I imagine there's other people missing that too. And so my intention on going out and hugging strangers, my intention was to hug strangers every day for a year, everybody that I encountered. And what I wanted to share was an appreciation. I wanted them to feel like I see you, I honor you, I value you, and I
Mhm.
appreciate you. And that's what I wanted to say in those hugs.
That is really, lovely. It's really, of course, human. And I believe healing often it hides in plain sight. And I find this act of rebellion through softness, through hugs, deeply, deeply moving. And Melinda, did the first few hugs they feel healing, or were they uncomfortable? And was there wounds in your own body, or in maybe in your own mind?
So they were uncomfortable and they never got comfortable. So for that whole year, I remained uncomfortable. Um, because this act of hugging strangers, I would always ask permission. I would always start with a hi, like a little conversation and do you mind if I give you a hug? Is how I would always ask. And and that act was never comfortable because it's incredibly vulnerable and it's incredibly It's just incredibly vulnerable. And I don't know that vulnerability, I don't know about any of your listeners, but I have never gotten comfortable with vulnerability. So that was always the case.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the if I were in your place, Melinda, I would have felt so um anxious, nervous. It would depend on people to people,
Yeah.
because of course there is COVID, and on top of that, many people they don't like to be very touchy, or they don't like the physical proximity. So that's there as well. You never know, but that's I think it's a pilgrimage. It's not just a practice. And during those moments, Melinda, what did those strangers reflect back to you about yourself? What did you realize that the world may not look as bad as it seems to be? Something like that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because there were kind of two components to that. There's two parts to this answer. And the first one was when I was doing the hugging for that year. What was being reflected back to me was what I was hoping to find, which is that most human beings, nearly all human beings, are kind and loving and they want that connection. And so there would be so many times when even the most skeptical of people that you can tell were not comfortable with the hugs, when they let me hug them, I got to witness this most beautiful transition or transformation in their bodies where all of those hormones came into play and you could just see their shoulders drop. You could see their face just soften. And it almost brought me to tears every time because it was just such a beautiful transformation in such a quick amount of time, just through that act of the hug.
Mhm.
So,
Mm.
on one hand, there was that piece that was being mirrored back to me, this love that was being mirrored back to me. Um, but when it was over, I was so empty and so much lonelier than before. And it took years for me to recognize that the other piece that had been mirrored back to me was that in the same instance that I was sharing with them my love and letting them know that I appreciated them, that I valued them, that I saw them, I also wanted to know that other people appreciated me, they loved me, and that they valued me. So that took years to unpack that.
Mhm. Hmm. Hmm. That makes sense. That totally makes sense. And uh, no, this is a soul mirror for the reason, and I really love the fact that how this journey of healing for you it beautifully um kind of converges with the theme of soul mirror,
Yeah.
like the reflections that you saw and those you hugged. Um and and uh, your divorce, it happened during the pandemic, which
Yes.
definitely was a time when touch was off limits for many, for almost every one of us.
Yes.
So how did that paradox shape your healing and your sense of identity as a woman stepping into a new chapter?
You know, in some ways, I actually found the pandemic to be really healing because having that
Mhm.
isolation caused me to really go inside and to really be with myself and learn to love myself without needing the validation of another person. And so, in that
Mhm.
respect, that felt incredibly healing. But after spending years hugging people and kind of like being in that space of what it means to connect with people physically, I also
Mhm.
had to learn how can I find that same connection in a world where touch isn't allowed and we didn't know at the time when it would be allowed again, right?
Yeah.
So, um, what I found was I started practicing what it was like that vulnerability that it took to hug someone and translated that over into what would it look like to be just that same kind of vulnerable over Zoom or over phone calls or, from a distance with people. And while it's not as immediate and it's a little bit more work, you can still get that same kind of a similar kind of connection without the hormones, of course, of the physical touch, through vulnerability, just in vulnerable conversations and connecting with people very authentically.
Mm, true. More than the hugging, what really resonated with me, as you mentioned, is the vulnerability, the the availability, the accessibility of a safe space to be who we are,
Yeah.
because we kind of, put a mask every day on ourselves, hiding our deepest pains and thoughts and feelings, because we believe that, we may be judged, or more of a stronger word, ostracized for it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mhm.
that was a really challenging growth journey that I went through,
Mhm.
was like finding that safe space within myself so that I knew that no matter how I showed up vulnerably, which I wanted to do because I wanted those deep connections, that no matter how that turned out, I could always return to myself and I was my own safe space.
Mm. That's a reclamation.
Yes, absolutely. It is a rebellion for sure.
Mm. And, you know, to me, especially for women, of course, I'm not generalizing anything, or just kind of um, putting sugar coating on anything. But sometimes, even the worst of times, especially divorce, especially for women, um, it's actually a very interesting way of kind of, knowing ourselves,
Yeah.
that who we are, minus the presence or the validation of, the other half, or the person with whom we were. Now they are not there. So who we are, we actually are. And of course, your journey beautifully. It's kind of, it's a beautiful example of that.
Yeah, thank you. It was definitely a journey, and one that, when we look at it through the lens of the hugs, it was like I was, hugging all these people for to share this love. They were reflecting back and mirroring the things that I most needed in my life so that by the time I did get that
Mhm.
divorce, you know, I came out of it hugging myself, and having that self-love for myself.
Yeah. Oh, and this is one of my, favorite. Every time I have a conversation with you, this is one of my favorite part of the discussion. So, um, not calling it as a mystical edge, but this is also scientific. Animal communication.
Yes.
Animals. Oh goodness. I mean, I'll be very honest. It may sound uh, you know may not sound pleasant to everyone, but I I do kind of, put um, pets and animals at a level above humans when it comes to love, or connection, or energy, in terms of seeking inspiration from them, or kind of, trying to understand the actual essence of humanity. How do these modalities, like energy healing, nature rituals, connecting with animals, how do these modalities speak to the same part of your soul that hugging does?
Well, that's a great question. I love that question, Sana. Um,
Yeah.
it's I think what I find to be the same is that when you're hugging someone and when you're vulnerably hugging someone and you're allowing for that raw, honest vulnerability to be there, the energy
Mhm.
is so clear and there's just an authenticity there between humans that's rare. But yet, when we're in nature and when we're around our pets or when we're, taking a look at the trees and the flowers and the butterflies, they only know authenticity. So
Mm.
anytime I am in nature with my animals, I know that what's being reflected back to me, the ways that they're mirroring me,
Mm.
is the most authentic always. And that is so healing.
That's true. That's true. And I often find that, nature or intuitive practices, they mirror back what our logical minds, the rational minds won't allow. And is there any one moment in nature that completely cracked you open and changed your direction? I mean, you have shared a very beautiful moment on another one of our podcasts we recently recorded, which will be very soon released. But I would love to know um, some kind of experience. It can be sometimes very psychedelic kind of experience that you felt connected with, like you felt one with nature, with yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of one of those questions that I wouldn't even know how to pinpoint one. It almost feels like, because it's not always the most profound, meaningful experiences where it's like this obvious huge thing happens. It can be just like this morning is a perfect example. I was walking around my neighborhood and I was really deep in all of my human self, like thinking about the things that I
Mm.
needed to get done and the judgments I had about myself. And I looked up into the sky and the clouds there was like that beautiful layer of thin clouds that just spread across the sky in a way that took my breath away. And it reminded me like that my human thoughts and these judgments and these things that I need to be doing are so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. And the bigger picture is that everything is so beautiful if we let it be. And I think sometimes it can just be those really relatively minor moments that just remind us of who we are and why we're here.
That's beautiful, beautiful realization. And there will be a lot of skeptics or people who say that it's fine, it's beautiful, all these thoughts are fine, but they do come at a privilege. Um, many people, especially many women, don't even have that liberty to even think about all this because there's so much, um, stuck in toxic environments or uh, in a lot of self-doubt because they have no one to come to support when they really need.
Yeah.
So what would you say to all these women? They may be feeling a lot. They would like to cry out loud or maybe hug someone. They would need hug from someone. Um, and they are feeling like they have nothing left to give, let alone a hug.
Yeah. So that's wow, what a great question, Senna. Because it's so true. I recognize my own privileges and the ways that I've been able to heal and the places I've been able to come to. But I also know what it feels like to be in survival mode and that that's all that you have access to. is just surviving.
Mm.
And what I would say to women who are specifically seeking for that connection or that different path and being out of this survival mode is first and foremost offering so much compassion to themselves. One of the things that I really loved to do and still use as a practice is to simply place my hand on my heart and just take a deep breath and remind myself that I'm still breathing. And as long as I'm still breathing, I'm still here. And there's a reason for that. And just letting that be enough.
Mm. Wow, that's empowering. And thank you for sharing that. And I believe that sometimes even a single small moment of being seen can change someone's entire day
Yeah.
or life.
Yeah.
And I really, I would love that if this conversation is that moment for someone listening. So if our listeners, they would like to connect with you, Melinda, what would be the best way?
The best way is through my website, which is melindaleeschmitt.com.
Great. I'll make sure to have everything in the show notes for the links and details. And thank you so much once again, Melinda. I think you have really showed us that healing doesn't always come wrapped in ritual or the popular stuff that we see around self-help. I think it's more of a shared experiences, lived experiences. It comes in the shape of arms, outstretched, unguarded, and trembling with truth and vulnerability. So, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sana. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Uh, and to all the beautiful listeners out there, if you have ever, especially to all the women out there, if you have ever felt broken, lonely, or like no one could possibly understand your pain, maybe the real invitation is to soften, to open, to hug. This is the Soul Mirror, and today we didn't just reflect, we reached out. Until next time, I'm your host, Sana, and I invite all of you to stay soul led, curious, and don't be afraid to hug like your life depends on it because sometimes it does. Thank you.
Thank you.